I'm often asked, do I hate the Japanese? No, you can't hate a nation, can you? But I loathe the people that did what they did to us and other chaps.
In 2015, we interviewed Rouse Voisey, a veteran of the Second World War and former Japanese POW.
We were told, of course, to fight to the bitter end, but we had nothing to fight with anyway. I was with about 500 RAF people, and we didn't have a gun between us.
After being captured, the ship carrying Rouse and his allied compatriots to the notorious Sumatra railway was sunk.
What happened to them, I don't know. Whether they fell asleep, fell off and drowned, I don't know.
This is Rouse's incredible story.
I was born in Norwich, July 1920. I was one of 5 boys, the last one of 5 boys. I was about 17, going on 18. I joined the Air Force the last day of 1937. I was at Grantham at that time, at a flying training school. I was ground staff, not flying. We were on Sunday morning on the aerodrome, getting the aircraft ready, and a little boy came out and he said, "Mum says there's a war on." I think it was April 41 or thereabouts, when I was posted overseas to Singapore.
Singapore, a major British military base, would soon face the onslaught of the Japanese war machine.
We left as a unit about 2 days before Singapore fell. We went to Sumatra. We moved as a unit and we were on a little boat that was taking torpedoes that were being used on the squadron at Sumatra to stop them falling into Japanese hands. And we went to an aerodrome known as P2 in Sumatra, that's Palembang 2, and we were only there a couple of weeks and we were told to get out. We were not given transport, we were just told that the nearest railway was in such a distance away, get there and there would be a train down to take you off the island. Well, we got down to the port at the southern tip of Sumatra and went across to Java and were put in a school in Batavia where all the Air Force people were gathered, and we were utilised by the squadrons of Hurricanes that were there at the time while the war was on.
With the Japanese forces advancing relentlessly, Rouse found himself in a desperate situation.
We were told that we had to get out of Java, of course, and we went down to a port called Cilacap, but there were no boats there. What boats were there had been sunk, and so we literally had to sit there and wait for what was going on, and went to what is known as Tasik Malaya racecourse, and we were told, of course, to fight to the bitter end, but we had nothing to fight with anyway. I was with about 500 RAF people, and we didn't have a gun between us.
The fight for Java was short-lived. The Allied forces were quickly overwhelmed, and Rouse was taken as a prisoner of war.
From Yogyakarta, we were moved to Surabaya, to 2 camps, the Lyceum and then the Yarmouth. We were taken out on various working parties, oil refineries to the port, and repairing roads, clearing up bomb damage and the like for the Japanese. Sometime after arriving at the Yarmouth, we were taken to the port at Surabaya and put on a ship called the Imagi Maru. Several hundred of us, in fact probably near 1,000 or more. Anyway, we moved through the islands, through the Flores and past Bali and all those, to a little island called Siram. And we offloaded a lot of the stuff at Siram and then went to Haruka, which was only a few miles away, and where we were destined to build this airstrip. I was only there for a comparatively short time, about I think 8 months. I became ill and I couldn't walk. And I was put on the first sick boat back to Java, which was called the Nichinan Maru, and it took quite some considerable time to get back to Java. Eventually we arrived back there. We took a train journey the length of Java to Batavia, where some of us were put in hospitals, which were quite reasonable places, staffed by British and Dutch medical people, of course. And we were reasonably well looked after there. After a bit of recovery, we were then taken to what is called the cycle camp. That's a Dutch barracks in Batavia for recuperation, and then eventually drafted off to Sumatra, in my case. We left Batavia I think it was on a Saturday, and the Monday afternoon after that, we were sunk by HMS Tradewind off the west coast of Sumatra.
In September 1944, Rouse and thousands of other POWs were being shipped to Sumatra's notorious Death Railway on the Junyo Maru, a prison vessel. This unmarked Japanese hellship was attacked and sunk by the HMS Tradewind, a British submarine, leading to one of the deadliest maritime disasters of the Second World War.
The torpedo struck the boat. It wasn't a very loud explosion, or explosions. There were two of them. But you felt it. And Lieutenant Commander Upton, who was in charge of our draft, somehow had got up onto the bridge and shouted, "Abandon ship." Being a Navy man, he knew what was going on. We were unaware of the actual situation being below decks. But fortunately, there were no hatches on the boat, on the cargo hold that we were in, and we were able to get out reasonably well and jump into the sea. I think we were sunk the early evening of the Monday, and I was picked up the Wednesday morning, roughly about 40 hours in the sea. I'd joined with a couple of Dutchmen to form like a little raft to keep out of the water as much as possible. But after a couple of nights, or one night rather, the Dutch chappies just disappeared. What happened to them, I don't know. Whether they fell asleep, fell off and drowned, I don't know.
Of the over 6,000 POWs aboard the Junyo Maru, only a few hundred survived.
On the Wednesday morning, I heard the sound of a ship's engine, and one of the Japanese escorts had come back to pick up people. It wasn't going very fast, it was very, very slow going astern, and it was near enough for me to be able to swim over and get on it. A Japanese soldier stood at the end of the rope ladder, and I climbed up on board it and thanked him, and he pointed to where he wanted me to sit down, which I did. And there were other chaps there that had been picked up as well, and they gave us a sip of water and a sort of a ship's biscuit, for which I was very grateful.
Having narrowly escaped death aboard the Junyo Maru, Rouse found himself being transported to the infamous Sumatra Railway.
They put us all in the local prison, and I slept on a concrete slab, like a fishmonger's slab, if you know what I mean, for about 24 hours. I was absolutely whacked, of course. And after a few days, they took us to a train, and it took us to the foot of the mountains, and we were put on lorries, went through the mountains to the railway in Sumatra. We didn't arrive there until September of that year, about 44, and I was there until the close, of course. But obviously the railway was well underway by the time we got there. We were put on to keeping the embankments built up with sand, and also when we were quite near the mountains, and when there was a storm up in the mountains, and the river we were on the edge of a river, the river became an absolute torrent, and one of our tasks, which was a rather dangerous task, was to guide any debris that was coming down the river through the arches of the wooden bridge. It's one of those trestle bridges, and if rubbish built up against it, of course it would destroy it, which it nearly did.
The prisoners were subjected to relentless work in brutal conditions where starvation, disease, and the threat of violence was rife.
It was always from daylight till dusk. You just had to do what you were told, or you didn't get fed. If you were slacking at work or anything like that, if you got a rifle butt in your back or something, one of the guards had a favourite way of treating people who he thought had not done their bit, was to make them kneel on the railway line, which was quite painful. Not too long, mind you, because they were losing work. The main issue was rice, of course. But the Dutch, who of course had lived out there many years, most of them, they knew what could be gained from the jungles in the way of greenery. And so when chaps went out on working parties, they used to pick some of the greenery that could be used as a type of vegetables. There were other vegetables that came into the camp, of course, but they were mostly rotten stuff anyway. But on one occasion we did have a buffalo. We were able to buy a water buffalo, and we had to kill it and skin it and do everything ourselves for that. The medical people, of course, were wonderful. They did wonderful things. In Sumatra, they found a way of getting hold of rice husks. Apparently, when they polish the rice, the husks all come off, and what goodness there is in rice is in or near the husk. And they found a way of boiling it up and making a solution and injecting a little vitamin B that was in this, which helped to save lives, of course.
After 18 long months of back-breaking work, Rouse finally received some good news.
It was very strange. I don't know the exact date, of course, but we didn't even know that the European war had finished, never mind about this one, with the Japanese. We were at work one day, and what the job we were on at that particular time was building blast shelters to protect the railway locomotives, the engines. And the guards, Korean or otherwise, didn't seem at all interested in what we were doing. So we slackened off, and eventually during the day, they just took us back to camp. We thought it was rather strange that they weren't sort of being a bit belligerent towards us, so we thought there must have been something in the air. That night, it was noticed that they had a big fire going in that particular part of the camp. And the next morning, when we awoke, they were gone. They just disappeared. They never told us a thing. And so we sort of just assumed that everything was all right for some reason or other that we didn't know about. A few days later, an army officer, I think his name was Jacobs, a South African, and he came and told us that the war was over. And that's how we knew. And about a couple of weeks after that, probably a little less, Lady Mountbatten arrived, and she said, "My old man will soon have you out of here." Those were her very words, "My old man will have you out of here." And she said, "There's lots of pretty girls waiting for you chaps at home." Well, we were late. I don't think there was any great excitement. It was just a numbness. I can't ever remember sort of singing and dancing, as the saying goes. We were relieved, very relieved.
Rouse would learn that the Sumatra Railway wasn't the only one being built by prisoners of war during the conflict.
The Thai-Burma Railway was utterly terrible. Ours was bad, but it wasn't as terrible as the Thai Railway. For one thing, we didn't have to combat cholera, and that was the killer in Thailand. We had dysentery, we had malaria, we had beriberi, but not the fatal cholera. They were terrible times for the chaps, and I can't honestly imagine how any of them survived. I'm often asked, do I hate the Japanese? No, you can't hate a nation, can you? But I loathe the people that did what they did to us and other chaps. It was sheer slaughter, and I could never forgive them. Nor will I forget it.
In August 1945, after overcoming so much, Rouse once again set foot on English soil. He married his wife Doreen on the 2nd of August 1947 and returned as best he could to normality.
Initially, I worked for the Inland Revenue, no booze please, and as a filing clerk. And then I went into local government in the housing department of Norwich City Council, and I was there in local government for 32 years.
Rouse Voisey passed away peacefully in 2023 at the age of 102. We hope you enjoyed this video on the experiences of World War II veteran and ex-RAF pilot Rouse Voisey. If you would like to see more compelling stories of individuals who lived through historical events, then make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. We're uploading new interviews with conflict veterans every week, so don't forget to like the video and turn that notification bell on to not miss out when we release a new video. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.